Welcome to Winning Isn't Easy. I'm Nancy Cavey. I'm a National Individual Disability at ERISA Disability attorney. Before we get started, I've got to give you a legal disclaimer. This podcast is not legal advice. The Florida Bar Association says I have to say this, so nothing will prevent me from giving you an easy-to-understand overview of the disability insurance world, the games the carriers play, and what you need to know to get the disability benefits you deserve. So off we go. Now, I'm going to talk today about long-term care benefits in a long-term disability policy. Typically, a disability insurance policy doesn't cover long-term care services. And what we'll normally see is the employer offering a suite of employee benefits. It's disability policies, life insurance, health insurance, and even a pension. But there are some disability policies that within the body of the policy will offer long-term care benefits. Recently, I've been involved in the appeal of several such cases where the disability carrier pays for the long-term disability benefits, but denies the long-term care coverage in the policy. Now, long-term care benefits cover the costs of out-of-pocket expenses for long-term care assistance with basic activities of daily living, like bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, and other activities that may be specified in the policy. So in this week's episode, I'm going to talk about the interaction between a long-term disability benefits and long-term care benefits in a disability policy and what you need to know. So specifically, I'm going to talk about three things. First, the four differences between long-term disability insurance and long-term care insurance. Two, typical long-term care policy terms that you should be familiar with and why the devil is in the policy terms. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the games that disability and long-term care carriers play in denying benefits. Got it? Let's take a break. Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. Let's talk about the four differences between long-term disability insurance and long-term care insurance. Now, long-term disability benefits provide for the payment of disability benefits if you're unable to perform your own occupation, and generally, after 2 years, an inability to perform any occupation. There are no uniform disability policies or plans in the United States. Each is different. So I always urge people to get a copy of their policy or plan and read it cover to cover so you understand the definition of disability, the definition of occupation, what you've got to prove to get your benefits, how your benefits might be coordinated with other benefits, whether there's any policy limitations for mental, nervous, or subjective medical conditions, and how long you might be eligible for benefits. Think of this as a form of income replacement, because a typical disability insurance policy will pay 50 to 60% of your income that you had before you became disabled. Now, on the other hand, you might have individual or group long-term care insurance benefits that cover expenses that you incur if you're not able to take care of yourself. Normally, long-term care benefits will begin if you're no longer able to perform 2 or 3 of the 6 activities of daily living, such as hygiene, dressing, eating, toileting, transferring, walking, having a cognitive impairment. And so the long-term care policy will pay for the costs and expenses associated with that care that may not be covered by your group health insurance policy or even by Medicare. This can include extended stays in a nursing home or rehabilitation facility or even home care. Now, long-term care and disability insurance is not just for the elderly. You might become disabled as a result of a progressive medical condition or as a result of an accident. The long-term care insurance, particularly if you buy it as an individual, can be very expensive compared to other types of insurance products. And many times the long-term care costs will far exceed the premiums, but the premiums can increase, unlike a disability insurance policy. Now, in a long-term care policy, you can decide how much care you want to purchase, the nature of the benefits, how much benefits will be paid, the length of time. And ultimately, the long-term care insurance company will determine the premium based on your age and health. If we're talking about an ERISA type situation, the long-term disability carrier offers your employer a group rate. That's far less than what you could pay for if you bought an individual disability policy. And sometimes, as I've said, there are long-term disability policies that offer within it long-term care benefits. But generally, let's talk about the 4 fundamental differences between long-term disability insurance and long-term care insurance. First, long-term care insurance protects your asset from being used or dissipated because of the need for long-term care. Disability insurance, on the other hand, protects your income in the event you can't work. Long-term care covers the cost of home care, assisted living, nursing home, and maybe modifications to stay at home. It won't pay your mortgage if you stay at home or your normal household bills. That's where the long-term disability benefits will pay you an income that you can use any way you see fit. Pay your mortgage, pay your bills, pay your groceries, whatever it is you want to do with that money. Number 2, long-term care provides benefits when your doctor confirms that you can't generally do 2 out of 6 activities of daily living or have a cognitive impairment due to dementia or Alzheimer's. Long-term disability will normally have an elimination period, which is 90 days long, and you get no benefits in that period of time. When you satisfy that benefit, then you become eligible for coverage. So the process is different, and you get paid long-term disability benefits if you meet the definition of disability, which is not always the same as, and generally isn't, the inability to do 2 out of 6 activities. Number 3, long-term care can be paid for by your employer or can be offered to you as a voluntary benefit for you. And now, more often than not, as I've said, I don't see that type of coverage in a disability insurance policy. And more often than not, people will buy an individual long-term care policy. So the way you get them can be completely different. You can buy an individual disability policy, an individual disability long-term care policy, very expensive. Or you can get a long-term disability policy through your employer, governed generally by the ERISA law. And generally, as I've said, it does not provide for long-term care benefits. Now, number 4, long-term care benefits can be used during your working years to pay for care if you're unable to perform ADLs. And it doesn't matter the period of time you're disabled or can't do those activities, unless, of course, when you purchase the policy, you put limits on the amount of care, the length of care, or the cost of care. Disability insurance, on the other hand, is generally used during your working years as an income replacement if you're disabled, and it will normally stop at retirement age. So you can see that there are some very fundamental differences, and what I'm going to talk about next is long-term care benefits within a disability insurance policy and the problems that you can face. Got it? Let's take a break.